Hello and welcome back to Carto Geospatial Solutions. So first of all, I would like to let you know that I have created a new playlist in the name Geospatial Concepts. So all the geographical concepts that I will be discussing henceforth will be uploaded in that playlist. So please do check it out. So as the first one in that playlist, we are going to discuss about the two terms that are being widely used all over the world in terms of pinpointing a particular location. So these two terms are the latitudes and longitudes. So by the end of this video, should you be given a pair of coordinates, you will be in a position to identify which one is latitude and which one is longitude. So in order to understand these terms properly, first we have to learn about the types of coordinate systems. So when it comes to the coordinate systems, there are two types. The first one being the geographic coordinate system, also known as the GCS, and the other one being the projected coordinate system, also known as the PCS. So first we're looking at the geographic coordinate system. So these geographic coordinate system is measured in a three-dimensional space. That is, they are measured in the form of angles, and that is the reason why they are expressed in the form of decimal degrees or degree, minutes, and seconds. And the values that we obtain using this geographic coordinate system are heavily datum specific. So this datum is a separate concept on its own, but long story cut short, datum is a reference surface that is used to approximate the true shape of our Earth. So this datum is used to pinpoint the locations on its surface. And when it comes to the datum, they are of two types. The first one is called the local datum, and the other one is called the global datum. So the local datum is locally used by some countries, while the global datum is globally accepted and it has been used all over the globe. Say for instance, NAD 83, also called as the North American Datum 1983. It is a local datum which is used by the countries in North America. And also there is another example named ETRS 89. It is called European Terrestrial Reference System 1989. And this local datum is used by European countries. And when it comes to the global datum, the best example would be WGS 1984. World Geodetic System 1984. This kind of global datum is widely accepted since it is considered to be a true approximation of our shape of the Earth. So it is based on this datum that these coordinate values will be varying, and these coordinate values are expressed in the form of latitude and longitude. So when it comes to the projected coordinate system, as its name implies, the term projection refers to the transformation of the coordinate values from a three-dimensional space to a two-dimensional space. And that is the coordinate values which are expressed in the form of angle in decimal degrees or degree, minutes, seconds. It's transformed into a unit unit like meters or kilometers or in the form of feet. So this transformation of a three-dimensional space to a two-dimensional space like a map is called the map projection. And when it comes to map projection, there are various kinds of it, like cylindrical projection, conical, conformal, etc. And we will be discussing this topic in detail in the future videos. So right now it is better to understand that the geographic coordinate system is measured in the form of angular units, whereas the projected coordinate system is measured in the form of linear units like meters or kilometers. And these linear units are expressed in the form of a Cartesian coordinate system. So this Cartesian coordinate system is nothing but simply a graph sheet in which the location of a particular place is calculated by its distance from the origin. That is, how far the particular place is from the origin in terms of its x-axis as well as the y-axis. So I hope you have understood the difference between the two types of coordinate systems and to which category these latitudes and longitudes belong to. So now I suppose we can delve into a topic of interest. So first we will be looking at the latitudes. So these latitudes are the imaginary lines that are being drawn from east to west direction. As you can see, these are the latitudes, And since these lines are being parallel to each other, these lines are also called as a parallels. And the values of these latitudes will be varying from north to south. That is, this equator will be having a latitudinal value of 0 degrees, and as you progress towards the poles, the values will be increasing. That is, on the northern pole, the latitudinal value will be 90 degrees north, and to the southern pole, it will be 90 degrees south. So, in total, you'll be having latitudinal lines of 180 degrees. So, some of the latitudinal lines of importance are the equator. So, as I said already, the equator is a latitude that is having a value of 0 degrees. And based on this equator, the values of the other latitudinal lines are calculated. So, this being the equator, it is equally dividing the entire globe into two equal halves. So the top half being called the northern hemisphere, and the bottom half is called the southern hemisphere. And apart from this equator, two more important latitudinal lines to note are the Tropic of Cancer, which is towards the north. That is, it is 23.5 degrees north from the equator, and the Tropic of Capricorn, which is 23.5 degrees to the south of the equator. Apart from the usage of latitude in terms of locating places, these latitudes also provide some valuable information for estimating the climates of regions. So, say for instance, this band, that is the band that is covering the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. So, all these regions are said to experience a tropical climate, and these countries are called the tropical countries. So, these countries will be experiencing a hot and humid climate with a heavy amount of atmospheric moisture. And as you progress towards your poles, that is in the case of the upper latitude regions, those places will be experiencing a cold and dry climate. And as you progress further towards the polar regions, these places will be experiencing a tundra climate. That is, they'll be experiencing a cold and a freezing climate with no amount of moisture. So, apart from being used as coordinate values, they can also provide you some idea about the climates of the places. So now we'll be discussing about the distance between the degrees of latitude. So latitudes will be measuring the least to the equator. That is, the distance between two lines of latitudes will be least to the equator, and this distance will be progressing as we progress towards the poles. So what it means is that two lines of latitudes near the equator, if you assume two lines of latitude near the equator, and should we wish to measure the distance between those two degrees of latitude, then obviously we'll be measuring a smaller distance when compared to those two lines that are near the poles. So we'll be doing a practical exercise on this to better understand this. Further, let's go to Google to get the coordinates of a particular place. So in this case, we shall take the coordinates of Chennai city. So let me go to Google first. So as you can see, these are the coordinates of Chennai city. I'm going to feed these coordinates in the Google Earth software. So I'm going to feed in the coordinates of Chennai city in this Google Earth software. So I'm just going to copy the coordinates which we have found out here. So as you can see, it is pinpointing on the correct location. I'm just going to save this place first. Right clicking on it and save to my places. So as you can see, I've saved this place. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to increase the latitudinal value by 1 degree. Since we are going to measure the distance between 2 degrees, I'm going to increase this value to 14. So now we are going to measure the distance between these two coordinates. So for that, let me zoom in a bit, and I'm going to use this ruler tool. As you can see here, uh, the distance between these two latitudinal lines is 110.92 kilometers. As I said earlier, distance range is not that much significant when it comes to latitudinal lines. It will be varying somewhat between 110.2 to 111.6. So as we progress towards the polar regions, the distance between 2 degrees of lines will be increasing. So let's say, for example, we will take another city in the polar region. So for that, first let me clear this, and let us take the coordinates of Moscow city, which is Russia's capital. So for that, let me go to the Google and find the coordinates of Moscow city. So these are the coordinates of Moscow city. So let me copy it and paste it in Google Earth. First, I'm going to save this place again. It has been saved. So I'm just going to increase this value 55 to 56. It is quite obvious here. You can see the vast amount of difference in the distance between these two coordinates. Let us measure the distance between these two. You can see the distance here. It is showing us 111.53. So I hope you have understood the difference. That is, the distance varies as we progress from the equator towards the polar regions. So now we shall discuss about the longitudes. So these longitudes are also the imaginary lines that are being drawn from the north to south direction. As you can see, these were longitudinal lines, and they start and end at the poles. So these longitudinal lines always converge at the poles, and the values of these lines will be varying from the east to west direction. And just like how the latitudes are called as the parallels, these longitudes are called meridians. And just like how the equator is for the latitude, it is a prime meridian that is for the longitude. As you can see, this prime meridian is the reference surface, the reference line based on which the degrees of the longitudinal lines are being calculated. And in the case of latitudes, they were totally 180 degrees in number. You might remember that the latitudes were 90 degrees north and 90 degrees to the south. So totally they'll be having a total of 180 degrees in number. As in the case of longitudes, they are totally 360 degrees in number. So for that, first you have to understand that these longitudinal lines are more like great circles. As you can see, this longitudinal line is like a great circle. So you can see the one arm of that circle here, and the other arm on the other side of the globe. So with that being said, each longitudinal line will be having two arms. So totally you will be having 180 degrees on the front side of the globe, and the remaining 180 degrees on the back side of the globe. So in total you will be having a total of 360 degrees. So that is the difference you have to note between the latitude and the longitude. And when it comes to the important longitudinal lines, as we had discussed earlier, it is the prime meridian that is the important one. Other half of the prime meridian is the longitudinal line that is having a degree of 180 degrees. And this other half of the line is called the international date line. And just to be clear, this international date line doesn't strictly follow this 180 degrees line. And due to some mutual agreement that is being made between the countries in that particular region, in order to avoid some time confusion. So it is the prime meridian that occupies one half of this great circle, and the international date line, which occupies the other half of this great circle, are the two important lines of longitudes to be noted down. And just like how the latitude was important in estimating the climate of a particular place, these longitudinal lines are of vast importance in terms of time determination. So it is based on this prime meridian and times are being calculated. Since this prime meridian is passing over this Greenwich Observatory in UK, this particular line is being taken as the reference for time calculation. Uh, as the line that is passing over the Greenwich Observatory is called the Greenwich Mean Time. So all the longitudinal lines that are towards the east of this prime meridian are said to experience a faster time when compared to those that are towards the west of this prime meridian. So let's say in the case of our country, India, it is having a time zone of GMT plus 5 hours and 30 minutes. So what it means is that in case the time at the Greenwich is 12 p.m., then I will be having a time of 5:30 p.m. on the same day. Time at Greenwich plus 5.5 hours will be giving a value of 17:30, which is 5:30 p.m. on the same day. So now, just like how we discussed the distance between the degrees of latitude, we shall be discussing the same for the longitudes as well. So in the case of longitudes, it is the exact opposite of the latitudes. That is, the distance between the degrees of longitudes will be the maximum at the equator, and as we progress towards the poles, it will be varying drastically, and ultimately at the poles it is zero. As I said already, you have to remember that all these longitudinal lines are converging at the poles here, so there won't be any distance between them. So the distance range will be huge when compared to the latitudes. In the case of latitudes, we saw that the range is somewhat very less significant, as the distance was somewhat between 110 and 111 kilometers, whereas in the case of longitudes, it will be varying between 111 kilometers at the equator and to 0 at the poles. So for that, we shall do a practical exercise to know the difference using the Google Earth software again. For that, given the coordinates of Chennai city again, as you can see here. So now in this case, I'm going to increase the longitudinal value by 1 degree. So I'm just going to increase this value of 80 to 81 degrees east. So first, I've increased it. So as you can see, this is the other longitudinal line. So now we are going to measure the distance between these two using the ruler option. So you can see the distance here. So the distance is 109.80 kilometers. So we will do the same thing again for the Moscow coordinates. So let me clear this, and I will just fill in the Moscow coordinates again. Again, I'm going to increase the longitudinal value by 1 degree. So in this case, I'm going to increase this value. So now we'll be measuring the distance between these two. As you can see here, the distance is greatly reduced. So the distance which we measured for Chennai is around 110 kilometers, whereas in this case it is just around 62.78 kilometers. So this example would show you that the distance range when it comes to longitudinal lines are greatly significant. Final step. So in this step, we'll be discussing about how these values are actually calculated. So for that, let me put out a diagram first. So as you can see in this diagram, These coordinate values are calculated from the respective reference line. That is, it is the equator for the latitude, and it is the prime meridian for the longitude. As you can see in this place, the angle that is being made between the equatorial plane and the line that is passing through the center of the earth is being calculated. So in this case, the angle that is made between these two lines is 40 degrees, and that is the reason why this place is getting a value of 40 degrees. And since this place is towards the north of the equator, it has a value of 40 degrees north. And when it comes to the longitudinal value, it is being calculated by keeping this prime meridian as the reference line. So in this case, since this is the meridian on which the particular place is falling, we have to calculate we have to measure the angle between the prime meridian and this desired line. So the angle that is being made between these two lines is 50 degrees. And since this line is located towards the east of this prime meridian, it has a value of 50 degrees east. So ultimately, this particular place has a coordinate value of 40 degrees, 0 minutes and 0 seconds north the latitude, and 50 degrees, 0 minutes and 0 seconds east longitude. We can easily calculate the coordinates of any particular place by measuring the angle that a particular place makes with their respective reference lines. So I sincerely hope that you have understood the concepts of latitude and longitude and how these coordinates are measured and what is the relationship that they share with this geographic coordinate system. So I think this video was of some use to you. So please support my channel for many more interesting conceptual videos like these. And thank you so much for watching.